This episode is brought to you by Hill's Pet Nutrition. Every shelter pet deserves a second chance, and you're making it possible for thousands of them every day. Because when you feed your pet Hill's, you help feed a shelter pet, which helps make them healthy, happy, and more adoptable, changing their life forever. So they can change yours. Over 14 million shelter pets fed and adopted. Science did that. Visit hillspet.com/podcast to learn more.
Get ready for the greatest roast of all time, the Roast of Tom Brady, a Netflix live event happening May 5th. Hosted by Kevin Hart, the 7-time world champion gets his cleats held to the fire by famous friends and frenemies on an unforgettable night where everything is fair game. Tune in on May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the Roast of Tom Brady, live only on Netflix.
Mother's Day is around the corner. Find the perfect gift for the mom in your life with a stunning piece of jewelry from Blue Nile. From timeless pearls to dazzling gemstones, Blue Nile has something she'll adore. Need it fast? Most items can ship overnight. Plus, enjoy guaranteed free shipping and returns. Don't miss our special Mother's Day deals. Save big on the season's most beautiful trends. For a limited time, get up to 50% off by going to BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and The Pavilion, possibly the only podcast which covers cricket and horse racing, my two biggest sporting loves. I'm Stephen Wallace, and joining me today on the show is Callum Helliwell, a young Sky Sports racing presenter who, if you are a racing fan, can regularly be seen on Sky Sports Channel 415. Engaging, passionate and knowledgeable about the sport he loves, Callum tells us about what it's like to work on live television in Britain and Saudi Arabia. In addition, you will hear his insightful views on the current state of diversity and inclusion in racing. Callum previously talked about that subject in episode 87. There is no one more enthusiastic than Callum, so settle back and enjoy episode 263 of The Paddock and The Pavilion. Welcome back to The Paddock and The Pavilion, Callum.
Well, thank you for having me, Stephen. It's been. We've just discussed it's been 3 years or so now, which is all seems a bit ridiculous. Too long.
Yeah, it was October 21, episode 87, and we, on that occasion, spoke about your career in racing, and in particular about diversity and inclusion in racing. Both of these subjects we're going to cover again today, and more. A lot's happened, as you said, since we last spoke. And to begin with, let's focus on your new role at Sky before we move on to working in Saudi Arabia. When we last spoke, you were just a researcher. Now you're a presenter.
Technically speaking, I'm still researching. I've got 2 more researcher shifts on Tuesday and Wednesday, so tomorrow and Wednesday, before I can say I am no longer a Sky Sports racing researcher, which is utterly terrifying. But yeah, it's been an incredible role. I loved every second of it. It's the best job I've ever had. Like the research role at Sky, I'm so jealous of the person starting up behind me now it's just so much fun. And it's, for a horse racing geek like myself, it was just a really, really good experience, and got me in the office and around the team, and I got to know the team brilliantly, and it's kind of led to where I am now. And it was a perfect starting point for me within that organisation.
So was it a good grounding for the next job?
Oh, unbelievably good grounding. I think so many things I take into when I'm reporting now and presenting out in Saudi, I still use the techniques that I've developed as a researcher out there. So just the way I kind of delve into horse form, and I look at core statistics and do things that for me are now second nature. They're all things I learned through becoming a researcher. And Tom Abbott, who was sort of the news editor at Sky, he was sort of my main sort of guiding light throughout the whole thing. And he was awesome. And he sort of taught me the ropes and taught me how to really just take my sort of wide knowledge and narrow it down and focus on individual elements that put a show together. So there's been so many helpful people there, and they've kind of taken me and guided me to where I need to be now, which has been really helpful, because I think when you start, you're just this vat of knowledge. You're just this person who's so keen and knows bits about this, bits about the other, but actually managing to sort of funnel it down and make it make sense is huge. And that's what I've managed to do over the last few years now. It's been over 2.5 years, I think I've been at the gig now.
Yes, because I guess when you're on the air, you've got all this you want to say, but you've only got a certain amount of time to say it.
Yeah, I still try and get it all in. I'm still bad at that now, but it's having knowledge on every horse. I remember I was doing my training for my on-screen stuff, and I was with Mick Fitzgerald, and I think we were at Uttoxeter, we might be at Worcester. We were at Worcester, summer jumping at Worcester, before they tried to knock everything down and rebuild it all. We were discussing. I was just so excited to be working alongside him, and I was saying, so what is the one thing that you do? And he said two things: know who the clerk of the course is and make sure you've got their details to hand straight away. And secondly, have a line on every horse. And it's something I've taken all the way through. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, no matter how big or small the meeting is, I will have a line on every single horse that's running, purely because you just don't know what's going to happen when you're on air, and you want to be over-prepared rather than under-prepared. So that sort of thing, those skills that I learned at the research, I now funnel into working out what I can say for each individual horse, and quite often jockey as well.
I'd agree there. You always need to know more than you actually need to put across, 100%. Don't you? Yeah. And when you go live on air and Boise's sort of saying we're now going live to Lingfield Park, do you get nervous when you first go on?
No, I'm so excited. I am so excited. It's the best feeling. That countdown that you get either coming off a break or when you've got Sean in the studio or anybody else in the studio saying we're going to go live to Callum at Wolverhampton. There is no better feeling. There is absolutely no greater feeling than that sense of anticipation that it is live television and you've got one chance, you've got to hit it and you've got to be prepared. And for me, it's just the best feeling in the world.
And what time are you arriving at the race meet before?
That's an interesting one because it all depends what time we start racing. I'm a sucker for being early. All the race tech camera crew love it because I turn up ridiculously early for everything. So if there was I did a Plumpton a few weeks ago, which was a Monday afternoon at Plumpton, first race at 2:15. I was there at 10, which is utterly ridiculous. Your first live won't be until maybe 11:45, and your call time will probably be about 11ish. But for me, I like to be there nice and early. I like to walk the track, get a feel, say hello to people. I think it's vitally important that you make sure you kind of know who's in charge of what at a race course. I think a lot of people think I sort of just turn up and do it, but I'll speak to winning connections teams, I'll speak to sales managers teams, I'll speak to anyone involved within the race course. And what's crazy now is that people actually know who I am. And they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so and such and such. We do this. And that you hear some amazing things. And you find out some incredible bits of information that you wouldn't know if you just walked straight in and went straight into the press room and did some research and went out and did a shift. So I try and make sure I speak to as many people as I can, say hello, put my head into the weighing room, chat to the clerk of the scales, and just let everybody know I'm around. And if they've got any questions or I've got any questions, I know where to go.
You must get to know spectators at certain courses as well.
You do. It's weird because I'm still at that stage where I'm not a big enough name for people to be expecting to see me. So I'm always a disappointment when I first arrive. So whenever I'm at Plumpton, people are like, where's Hayley? Whenever I'm at Wolverhampton, people are like, where's Leona? If I go to Suzzle, it's where's Simon? So it's very often that I'm a little bit of a disappointment to people when I get there. But I am beginning to see plenty of regulars, Newcastle especially. I know quite a few of the guys that are up at Newcastle quite often, and they've been lovely, so supportive. And that's been a real wonderful thing. I think when I first went there, I was wearing a pair of trainers that were totally inappropriate for being in that parade ring because their parade ring is grass. So unlike some which is artificial turf, Wolverhampton being one of them, if you're there in some rubbishy trainers, you are just going to drown in there. So now I go wearing boots and everyone's like, see, we told you, you've got to change your footwear. So it's vitally important that I do that. And yeah, they've been wonderful. It's been a really awesome and really positive experience.
I think I saw that clip on X where you got trainers on. You were talking about the ground.
Yeah, that was it. And I remember I was wearing chinos that had been washed so often they were nearly white. I had a pair of awful trainers on and I was basically sinking in the parade ring. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. So all things that you learn on the job, but no one's going to teach you that. You've got to sort of discover that yourself. So it's been a learning curve. The whole thing's been a giant learning curve.
And in your job, you're really subject to the elements, aren't you? The wind, the rain, the frost.
Oh, you absolutely are. I think I'm quite looking forward to the summer. I was at Bath on Friday, and it's the first time I've done a full day where it's been resplendent sunshine. I mean, it was like a monsoon getting there, but as soon as we got there, the sun did come out and we had a lovely evening. But you are a little bit exposed. Some areas we do have some cover. We've got a couple of little sneaky rooms in places, in Newcastle especially. If it's Baltic up there, we tend to position ourselves more towards the inside into the press area, which is really helpful. But most of the time, you just got to wrap up warm and prepare yourself, really, because if you're feeling uncomfortable, I think that comes across on air. And I always like to be wrapped up and warm and make sure I feel good, so then I can put across the best information possible, rather than sitting there thinking, I am bloody cold.
Have you got a favourite course? Dare you say that?
I'd be upsetting people, but I think I've got two. One for very sentimental reasons. Plumpton has always got a special place in my heart. It was one of the first race courses I ever went to. So it's still a really strange moment when I get to go back there as a reporter. It's wonderful, and it's certainly one of my favourites. And there's loads of people always come up to me and say, "Oh, say hello to your mum for me," and all that sort of stuff, which is really nice. And I absolutely love Wolverhampton. It's one of my first regulars that I got to do. And I love the team there. I love the course. I love that you often get much better horses than people give credit for. I'm a huge fan of Class 5 and Class 6 handicaps. So you get plenty of those at Wolves. And I really enjoy going to Wolverhampton. So it's not too bad a drive for me. It's straight up the motorway. So it's good fun. So I'd certainly say Plumpton and Wolverhampton would be my favourites, but plenty of others. I don't want to upset anybody when we're missing some. But those are two that come to mind immediately.
How's your tipping? Are you very successful?
Shocking. Yeah, absolutely shocking. I love to take on favourites and have a couple of nice each way plays. I had a lovely one at Bath Friday where we talk about being a researcher. I'd looked up the numbers for when Kieran Fallon and Neil Mulholland had joined forces, and they had a ridiculous strike rate. I think there was 38% when they teamed up. And that was the first tick for me. And then you mention it, it then gets backed in and it then wins. That's one of the best feelings in the world, where you feel like I've actually guided people to a winning selection. I also, on that same meeting, we had, I can't remember what the sprinter was called now, but he was an age-old sprinter who would have won the race last year. His form had completely gone off the boil, but he'd been given a little break. He was £9 lower than the last time he won that race. And he had a £7 claimer on board. Sharik Mohammed was on board. And they just went straight from the front and absolutely blitzed them. And it was wonderful to see, because it's great when the research that you do comes off and you do your thinking, you've done your work, and then what you think is going to happen actually happens. And it's great that you can guide people in that direction. But I've had plenty more losers than winners, especially on Sky Sports Racing.
What about any funny moments you've had?
Oh, geez, plenty. The bucking bronco at Fosslas. Where I managed to tear my hamstring while lasting on it for about 13 seconds. That made the weekly hive. A very recent one, my car. I couldn't get to my car where I live in West London, and there was an incident with the police outside of my flat, and the flat suddenly became sort of a crime scene. So we weren't able to get to our cars. So I was in the office on the Sunday night, and I was meant to be at Lingfield on the Monday. And I was in there on Sunday night complaining to everyone, saying, I don't think I'm going to get my car or anything like that. And John Blance happened to be in the studio that evening doing stateside. And he said, I'm driving down to Lingfield on the Monday because there's a train strike. And I said, John, would you mind giving me a lift? So he gave me a lift down to Parsons Green, and we came in and we walked in together. And Clive, our cameraman, was so shocked to see the two of us together. He didn't quite know what to do. So he sort of tried to film John, then saw me, then went back to John. And we were just having an absolute laugh about that, because it's just one of those situations that I don't think he was ready for at all. And I love it. It's all a highlight for me, because I'm just having the time of my life while I'm doing it right now. So it's great, and I'm exceptionally fortunate to have been supported by everyone to put me in this position and allow me to continue to grow within it, because I've still got so much more to learn.
Where do you listen to the Paddock and the Pavilion? Gail Ashton from Manchester, mother of jockey Gavin Ashton, who featured in our 5-part series The Road to Recovery in early summer 2022, told me she listened to our latest racing podcast, Embracing the Challenge Part 1, in the gym. let me know where you listen to the show and I will read out your name. By the way, Gavin is now riding in the United States, where he has ridden winners for the leading American trainer and Royal Ascot winner, Wesley Ward. Now let's get back to Callum and his time working on television in Saudi Arabia. Well, let's move on from Sky Sports. You've also been working in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. How did that gig come about?
Yeah, that's been it's been an incredible journey. That I got a random DM slide from Denise Large, who works as a consultant for HBA, but also has her own media company. And she got in touch with me and said there's an opportunity going out in Saudi Arabia. And to be honest, I thought I was getting, I thought it was a scam. to be honest, I thought there's no way this is happening. And I spoke to a few people that were very close to me, and I said, "What do you think?" And everyone's like, "Well, if it's legit, go for it." I spoke to Sky, because you got to remember I was still full time at Sky at that point, and I would have had to stop doing that in order to take this role. And they were incredible, and they said, "Yeah, go for it, absolutely, give it your best shot." And yeah, it sort of all happened very quickly after that. I ended up getting on a plane, saying goodbye to my girlfriend. We've been together for 3 months or something like that, and then I said, "All right, I'm off for 2 months," and away I went to Taif for 2 months out in Taif, and sort of learning on the go. I had no idea how things worked out there to start with, but we put together a show and it was incredible. And I have to thank Tom Collins, who was the first analyst out there with me. Shamila was the Paddock analyst. Shamila Hanley was the Paddock analyst out there too. And the three of us we were just flying at the seat of our pants at the beginning. And come the end of that 2 months in Taif, it was probably the best experience ever, because we learned how the system worked. We learned what racing was like over there. We learned who to follow, trainers to keep an eye out on, racecraft, and all those different things. And it was a really, really incredible experience. And our producer, Greg Duke, who sort of put together this band of merry men and women, he did a marvellous job putting the team together, and we sort of thrived from there. We've had Rory Delage, he's been out since as well. He's definitely the most intelligent man I've ever been able to be fortunate enough to kind of pick his brain. He's just a fountain of knowledge, basically, that man, and he's been hugely helpful to me, and is often getting me out of much trouble when it comes to reporting on things and discussing things on air. And he's always making sure I toe the line and say the right things, which always helps. And yeah, so we've got a good team out there, and it's been an incredible experience. And then after Taif, we went out to Riyadh, and we did stints out in Riyadh, which was, it's just one of the most incredible race courses in the world. I always tell everyone, if you've got a chance to go, really do go and take a look at the place, because it's wildly exciting. It's brilliant.
This role is quite different to the one you're doing in this country.
Hugely different. Yeah, I'm in a studio. I'm in a studio, sat at a desk discussing racing, and it was a big shock to start with, because I'd not done any work like that before, and it's sort of learning on the go. But like I said, it could only be possible with the support that I was out there with. The group that went out there together, we were all sort of learning on the go, and that's what made it brilliant. When you get the chance to lean on people like Tom Collins and Rory Delage, you were always in safe hands. So it was almost like I didn't really have to worry about as much racing information. I could work on just being in a studio setup and really learn and grow in that mode. And I had those guys to help me with all the racing knowledge stuff. And then when we eventually got settled, and especially when we got to Riyadh, I felt our production level just went up another level, and we did a really good job. And I think we did ourselves proud in our first year out there, and hopefully we can do it again in the future.
So you went out there in the sort of late summer, and then you went over for the winter time, didn't you?
Yeah, so I went out there in late July, I think it was. Yeah, late July, and it might be, mid-July, something along those lines. Came back briefly after the end of the Thai season, just after probably late September. Had a little bit of a stint off, and then we were back in Riyadh all the way through until February. So it was an amazing experience, and I think that we saw the differences between Taif and Riyadh as race courses, but also the type of horse that was going to Taif and the type of horse that was going to Riyadh. And I think that was crucial, because we got to sort of really experience the full length and breadth of a season in Saudi Arabia, and just that learning experience and that ability to sort of understand how things work at a more horse-based level really helped our coverage as we went forward.
And you were there for the Saudi Cup?
Yeah, so I did the Saudi Cup with IMG and did the race course presenting because they bring in the big dogs for the feed. So the Nick Lux were all there and Ollie Bell, Tom Stanley, they were all doing their thing. So far more talented people than me. So I was doing race day presenting there. And that was brilliant because I got to use all the wealth of knowledge that I gathered throughout the season and kind of spill it all out to people, all the English speaking crew that were there. And it was a real that was probably my greatest racecourse experience of my life. I've never seen anything like it. I always tell everyone when Sir Alex Ferguson's horse Spirit Dancer won one of the races earlier on in the card, I genuinely have never seen or heard a sound like it. It was a cacophony of noise. You couldn't hear yourself think. The place was going ballistic. And then when Senor Buscador won, it was a free for all at that point. It was absolutely mad, and one of the best sporting experiences I've ever been fortunate enough to be involved in, and to be part of the race day presentation crew there alongside Abdul Rahim, who was the Arabic speaking race day presenter. The two of us working side by side. It was it was superb. It was a really good experience, and we were just fortunate enough to be part of a wonderful team with IMG and HBA Media have put together this brilliant group of people. I was so nervous. I cannot tell you how nervous I was, but once we got the first day out of the way, the second day it was a dream come true. Really, it was awesome.
I watched the race again today on YouTube. What a finish to the Saudi Cup, the fifth running of the event.
It was one of those that you can be very smug and say after timing, but there are a lot of friends and family of mine will have known that I was on the Senor Buscador hype train for about 2 weeks before the race because they were just going to go too fast. And the fact that Saudi Crown stayed there from leading pillar to post until the final sort of 50 yards before he was swept by Ushba Tesoro and then Senor Buscador, widest and latest of all, was just phenomenal. And I think what made it so brilliant is there was an element of Saudi ownership with Senor Buscador as well, which kind of made him a semi-home team runner as well, which was wonderful to see. And the finish was out of this world. It was a race where you were honestly, they turned in for home. I remember speaking to Abdul Rahim and going, wow, it's going to be some story. Saudi Crown hold on for this. And him going, oh no, what's the Japanese horse? And then Senor Buscador motoring down the outside. I don't really remember him crossing the line. I was getting that excited. But it was a really wonderful day and an awesome finish. And it was a really fitting end to what had been a really cool couple of days.
The most valuable race in the world.
Yeah, indeed it is. Indeed it is. And it's certainly, I still think within its position within the Middle East, it's got so much room to grow. There's so much more it can be. And it's grown exponentially over the last 4 or 5 years. But there's still so much room for growth. And there's still so many opportunities that they can take advantage of. And I always tell everybody that it shouldn't just be about those 2 days of the Saudi Cup meeting. There's some really great racing on the build-up. The Trials Day meeting, which is about a fortnight beforehand, is brilliant. Before that, you've got some amazing handicaps as well. You've got Arabian-only days as well, with the purebred Arabians running, which, if you're trying to pick a winner, is like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but eventually you can kind of work it out. And there's plenty to get stuck into all throughout the season. So although the most valuable race day in the world is obviously the one that everyone looks forward to the most, there's plenty of good quality action as well.
Do you think there'll be British runners again in the big race? Because we had a winner in 21, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Mishriff sort of opened the door to that. The dirt surface being such a forgiving dirt surface, such a safe dirt surface, will really interest people to come along. And I think we will see British interest continuously through, and it will only grow because horses like Mishriff have sort of kicked that door in. It was a shame we didn't get any this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see any in the future. Remember, Spirit Dancer won for Britain, Anaf won the sprint for Britain as well. I think we can hold our own at those meetings. Tower of London as well for the Irish. I was gutted for Ian Williams, who sort of got just nabbed in that race. So there's plenty of British interest, and obviously there'll always be Irish interest. So I do believe it's something that we will see more of. The hospitality is incredible. The people of Saudi Arabia are wonderful. The organisation is, again, another step forward. Everybody keeps telling me, oh, it's so much better than last year. Oh, they've done this year. That makes more sense and more. So they're clearly learning as an organisation. The Jockey Club of Saudi Arabia are clearly learning as this body and improving year on year. And I think more and more people will come, and more horses will come too. So I'm looking forward to it and seeing where it goes.
And will you be going back next year?
Hopefully, all fingers crossed. Just waiting for a couple of dots to get I's to get dotted and T's to get crossed. But I'd love to go back. I've made it very clear that I'd love to go back, and hopefully we can go back. We're just sort of waiting and seeing at the moment. I'd love it. I'd love it if I can. But also, if it doesn't happen, I would always take the experience that it was an incredible year. So whatever happened, I'm still grateful for the experience that I had, and I'd love to be a part of it again next season, which I think starts in early July. So looking forward to getting back out there if we can.
One thing I wanted to ask you, which I picked up on your X feed, is the wiggle.
The Wigberto wiggle. Yeah, the greatest dance move of all time. It's the old Wigberto wiggle. So for those who don't know, Wigberto Ramos, a Panamanian jockey, but he's been out in Saudi for 20 odd years, multiple champion jockey out there, really has been sort of, when we look back at racing in Saudi Arabia, which hopefully will continue to grow, I want to look back in 20 years' time and there should be a statue to Wigberto, because that man has opened the door for not only Panamanian jockeys, but also South American jockeys as a whole, Central American jockeys, Northern American jockeys. It's amazing the people we speak to when we're out in Saudi Arabia who are only there because of Wigberto. The fact that he's been there so long and he can see the way the sport has changed. He talked about, we interviewed him plenty of times, and we had him on our after show, which is the last sort of 10 minutes of the broadcast. I remember stood next to him and we were discussing riding Riyadh now and how he's riding against guys that he grew up, he saw growing up as children. Now he's running against them as adults, and he always goes, "It's like I still know all the tricks. I still know this track better than anybody else." But these guys that are coming through are so talented now that he really is beginning to see the difference. But I think he's got a few more years left in him, and that wiggle is the greatest dance. It's all in the shoulders. You got to hit the shoulders and move the hips at the same time, and you wiggle around for a little bit, and that's his celebration. And it's wonderful when he rides a winner, because it doesn't happen all the time now. It's so competitive out there, but when it does, he usually brings the house down and gives us a good wiggle as well.
Well, thanks for that little wiggle. I can put that little video bit now on my Twitter or X feed, whatever they want to call it. But
forget the rest of the interview. I've given you a wiggle now. That's it.
Mother's Day is around the corner. Find the perfect gift for the mom in your life with a stunning piece of jewelry from Blue Nile. From timeless pearls to dazzling gemstones, Blue Nile has something she'll adore. Need it fast? Most items can ship overnight. Plus, enjoy guaranteed free shipping and returns. Don't miss our special Mother's Day deals. Save big on the season's most beautiful trends. For a limited time, get up to 50% off by going to BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. Whether it's a walk-off grand slam or a base hit to center field. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only, must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only, must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's move on to something that's even more important than anything: diversity and inclusion. Because in our last podcast back in October 21, we spoke at length about these two topics. And as someone who's even more closely involved in the industry, I wanted to get your reflections on the current situation. Has it improved since October 21?
I think it's certainly improved in many different elements. Are we there? Nowhere near yet, but we've certainly improved. I think there have been some real front runners. I mean, I certainly would take none of the credit for it. I think Josh Apiasi has been single-handedly superb. What he does some of the vitriol he received when he really started pushing for diversity and inclusion within our sport, which he was doing long before I got anywhere involved, was horrific. Some of the stuff he had to receive and deal with. And the fact that he kept going and has developed now, what for me, arguably, is something the sport should be incredibly proud of in the Racing Media Academy, is absolutely superb. I think when we're looking at horse focus sort of things, the racing schools and both the National Horse Racing School, which I'm a trustee of, and the British Racing School and the Scottish Racing Academy, it's not that they've always been very open to whoever wants to come in. There's a route for you. There's always a planned route. So if you were a member of an ethnically diverse or socio-economically diverse background, you always knew a route to go in if you wanted to ride. My big thing I always used to say was I was too big. Like it was very clear that I was never going to become a jockey, no matter what my hopes and dreams were, and there wasn't really a path for someone like me. I wasn't connected to anyone in the game. I had no sort of family connections. I wasn't from that sort of area of society. So I did feel that there was an opportunity there where I could have been lost. I was lucky that I just loved the sport more than anything, and I was going to get into it no matter what level or area it was. I always wanted to be involved. But if I didn't have that sort of get up and go attitude, there wouldn't have been a route for me. What Josh has created with the Racing Media Academy is that racing pathway, which has allowed people a path to come into the sport, which means that now, if you've got an interest, you can investigate that interest a bit further. And that's the first step. And people still, and I think it's becoming less of a dirty word now, but people still sort of shiver at diversity a little bit. They see diversity and you get the eye rolls, you get the comments. But I think the world is becoming a little bit more attuned to it. But what I love most about it is the fact that with the Racing Media Academy, people have seen that diversity just doesn't have to be a race issue. And I think that's so crucial, because diversity is just about people who are not from your usual funnels of interest. And some of the people that Josh has managed to get through, just in the interviews alone, let alone people that get onto the course finally, the different backgrounds that people have, and all their key interests is they absolutely love horse racing. It's phenomenal. People, I looked at the candidates this year, I'm going, some of these people are streets ahead of where I was when at their age. They've done so much with far less support than I ever had. Like, I look back at it now and thought I was so lucky to be supported by Goff, to be supported by Di, to be supported by so many great people when I first started out riding and wanted to get into this industry, that I was very lucky. But there are some people who have done far more than me with far less support, and to finally give those guys a leg up is massive. And I think the Racing Media Academy does a great job at that. I do think there are some elements that we are still a long way behind. I was very disappointed in Cheltenham and Ascot this year with their advertising. They're obviously looking to use a lot more black people in their advertising, which I've got nothing against, but they're not moderating the comments, and the comments are quite frankly horrific. Cheltenham's Wednesday, Cheltenham Festival Style Wednesday, which unironically, I don't think happened to be the least attended day of the meeting, had an advert featuring an interracial couple, and the comments on there were what I would describe, especially as someone in an interracial relationship myself, I found it quite frankly terrifying. Like, I was reading some of this and it was absolutely despicable, and there was no mention from the Jockey Club or Cheltenham Racecourse themselves in trying to moderate those comments. I think it's hugely important to either blank comments or have them moderated. And if you want to then blame a third-party advertising agency, make sure that when you hire one, they know how to moderate comments. Because if you wanted to go to Style Wednesday and you clicked on the advert, you're automatically going to see the comments. And this was specifically on Facebook, but I don't think the other adverts were any better, really, to be honest. But the other social media platforms were any better. But I just think that you are missing a trick there, where you can see some of the vitriol is really bad and will put people off. It's certainly, if I was first coming, if I wanted to go racing, I thought, I want to go to the Cheltenham Festival. I'll go with some friends and we'll go on the Wednesday. We'll go on the Wednesday. I love John Bon. I want to see John Bon take on El Fabiola. I'm going to go on Wednesday. You go on your social media, you see a link for it. It's like, oh, great, Cheltenham Festival. Let me click on that, and you see some of the comments saying, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be in this environment. If this is the people that are going to the event, I don't want to be a part of that event. And I think it's crucial that we acknowledge that, and acknowledge that there are a lot of people in our sport who wouldn't like people like me in the sport, and we really should make sure those comments are moderated. I'm not saying hide comments or anything like that. I think people have a right to speak, but people don't have a right to speak utter vitriolic hate speech at all, and I don't think that's ever appropriate.
So did the racecourses speak out against these comments?
Not at all. Not in the slightest. It's disappointing, because what I felt like when I did bring it up with certain members of racecourses and of the Jockey Club, who I won't name because I don't think it's turned into a mudslinging competition at that point, but I felt as if it's not our problem type of attitude to it. And there is so much else going on with China, and there were so many other elements happening, and I completely understand how something like this can get lost in the wash. But I do think it's crucial that when it does get acknowledged, it shouldn't be, well, it's not actually our fault, it's not our problem, because it's happening on your site, it's happening on your racecourse. So for me, it becomes your problem, even if it was created by a third-party advertising group. The buck eventually has to stop with someone, and I think it stops with the racecourses. And I think you just need to look at what Ascot are advertising at the moment, see the comments underneath that. You've got 2 black women surrounded by 6, 7, 8 white people in the shop, but the comments are all, oh yeah, just get black people in all these adverts, and oh, you're not going to convince any black people to come, they don't want to come racing, and it's all that sort of stuff. And then the other one is an animal rights person saying, you bet they die. I mean, if no one looking at this, the mind boggles that no one seems to be looking at this. And maybe I'm old-fashioned, I'm still using Facebook, and their main strategies are not Facebook. Maybe it's TikTok, Instagram, and it could be completely different. But if you're going to advertise on Facebook, you should be moderating these comments, because they are utterly horrendous. And I think it's something that can be such an easy fix, and it won't solve problems, but I think it won't create any additional problems either.
Are we seeing more black people going racing?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Within my experience, yeah, tenfold. And I love it. It gets me, like, I get a little bit emotional about it, because for the first time, I'm seeing black people at a racecourse and not being surprised. And it's at a whole different range of racecourses up and down the country. And it does there is a whole market of people who we've been ignoring for years. And finally, they're being not targeted, but they're being acknowledged. And I think it's crucial that we continue to, and it shouldn't be just targeted to zero in on black people, but we need to work out why people weren't coming racing. And I think that stops becoming a black and white thing. I think it does become a socio-economic thing. And I think what we need to do is work out, if we can work out why people weren't coming racing and can figure out a way to get them to come racing, everything else will fall into place itself. I really do. I think we've got some very intelligent people working within these departments now who are figuring this out and have stopped going, well, are you going to get more black people into racing? I said, well, I'm not responsible for that, and I can never be responsible for that. But what I can be responsible for is making racing a more welcoming place to come. And that's what we should be looking to do, a more welcoming, more inclusive place to come and enjoy the sport, because that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to enjoy the sport. And I think the fact that racecourses have changed and they've become far more family friendly. I was at Wolverhampton on Dinosaur Day on a few weeks ago, and Dinosaur Day to me would mean absolutely nothing. But the amount of kids you can get through the door doing that, and kids of all different creeds, colours, socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever, they're all coming because the racecourse has made themselves welcoming. They've made themselves an environment to come along to. Now, if a few of those kids want to come back and do it all again, it would be great. Watch the jockeys, especially at a course like Wolverhampton. They'll stop, they'll do photos, they'll give goggles away, they'll do all those things. Those things stick in the memories of kids and parents, and make it realise that racing is actually a fun family day out, which I think for a very long time, it wasn't really considered that. And I'm really hoping that trend continues, and we can continue marketing ourselves as something that is a sport available to all without having to pander to individual races, which I don't think we need to do. I think we open up the gates and people will come, and it shouldn't matter what colour they are. It should matter that they want to come racing, and more people come along.
Well, that's very good to hear. We've also got these silent areas which Bobby Beavers has been promoting.
Yes, yeah. Well, again, and people will look at that, and I think people underestimate what Bobby has done, and have completely. I think he's blown expectations out the water. Ironically, my first ever day at Sky was when he first announced the Autism and Racing campaign, And look how far it's come now, which I just think over such a 2.5 years, he's really taken it to a completely different level. But again, that's inclusivity. That is literally what diversity and inclusion is all about. Why is there a reason why you can't take your autistic son or daughter to the races? Oh, it's just, well, there's not a space my son or daughter would feel comfortable in. Okay, well, let's try and find a space. Let's try and work something out. And you see football clubs are doing it now, and people are understanding that it's not hard to do if done right, if made accessible, and you can get more people through the door. And more people through the door is exactly what you need to make money to keep a thing going. So the more people you can get in, the better, surely. I cannot understand how anybody would be against that. And the fact that Bobby's been dragging this uphill all along and doing it basically all by himself, and what he's achieved should be commended.
What about jockeys and trainers?
I think that is something that will take time. I think it would be crazy to think, oh, why don't we see more black trainers? Why don't we see more black jockeys? Well, it takes time to become a trainer. It takes time to become a jockey. And look at what we're doing in the pipeline right now. Look at where we're starting at right now. Look at where you're seeing the Riding a Dream Academy making a huge difference. I cannot put my hand on and say I'm involved at all. I'm not. They do exceptional work, and I'm just proud to just be a champion of it every time I'm asked about it, because I think they do an incredible job. I can only speak to what we do at the National Horse Racing, the National Horse Racing School, is that we are acknowledging that people from different backgrounds might want to come along. And I would think like one of the major discussions we all had at the National Racing College was about what we're doing when people don't want to move away from home. The whole reason of the NRC has always been people come to us, it's having a really tough time, they want to get away. We're an avenue to get you away. But what if you want to get in racing and you want to stay close to home? What are the options? We're based in Doncaster. We're based in the north. You could comfortably say that. What are the options if people want to stay in the north? Because what we discovered when the college was going to schools and we're getting face to face with young people who wanted to get into racing, a lot of them didn't like the idea of going far away from home. So what did we offer for people going the complete opposite of what we thought they wanted to do? We thought everybody wanted to get out as far away as possible and go and explore, but some people don't. And that's all about inclusivity, and that's all about just changing the way we think and changing what the course is offering to people to make sure that people don't feel like it's not for them. And I think what we'll see is steady, and this is going to take time, but steadily you will see a change. And we need to have this conversation in 10, 15 years' time to actually see if there has been a real difference or if there hasn't. There may not have been, but then we've got to work out what are we doing that's stopping this next step, because we certainly started the wheel. And if it's not turning all the way, we need to make sure to find out what's blocking it. And I'm really keen to see where we go in 5, 10, 15 years' time, because it'd be ridiculous for me to say, oh, next year I want 10 black trainers. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to figure out what we need to do to create that, and what we need to do to and whether what we're doing is actually working.
But you think we're making progress? We're on the right lines, yeah.
Progress. Yeah, I think we're making incredible progress. I think we're going to see the fruits of a lot of people's hard work in quite a short space of time. I really think we are, and I'm every time I see someone who I know has been through the Riding a Dream Academy or has been in touch with me for something, discussing racing or anything like that. See them on a race course. It's just the best feeling in the world, and it's awesome. It's a really cool feeling to see, and I'm proud of what so many other people are doing to make our sport more attractive. But again, I cannot take credit for an awful lot of it. There are a lot of people doing far more work than me, but I'm certainly seeing the fruits of their labour.
Well, that's promising to hear. Do you consider yourself a role model?
It's weird. No, not yet. I don't think so. I'd like people to look at me and say, if he can do it, why can't I? Rather than like as a role model, because I think I still see people as role models. So it would be crazy for me to see myself as one. But I would like people to think that he can do it and he's having the time of his life doing it. I can do it. Or that's something that I'd like to get involved in. Or when they switch on the TV and they see that I'm there, they're a little bit more invested. that would be really nice. And hopefully that's the case right now, but I'd love it to be the case in the future.
Because racing must reflect society to thrive in the future.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's one of those funny conversations about racing in the future, because if you talk to anyone who's over the age of 50, they'll automatically say, we've been having these conversations for years. I remember stumbling across, I don't know whether you follow the group on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, it's called Historic Racing Videos. And they put up usually just old races, but at one time they put up a racing question time done, goodness knows when, but it was a good few years ago. They're asking the same questions then that we're asking now. So clearly something works. Clearly it's not all gone to hell. So we are still going, but it's about what can we do to adapt in the changing times of this world, and what are we doing to make us more inclusive. Again, racing doesn't need to be reflective of society. Racing needs to be inviting to society, and that's what for me. It doesn't matter if you see it. Doesn't. I could be totally wrong here, but it doesn't matter if you see a whole sea of white people. But if those white people are uninviting, it's not just black people that are going to be putting off. It's not just people of ethnic minorities that they're putting off. They're going to be putting off other white people. If you see 20 white people and they're all very inclusive and they want you to come along and be a part of it, and they want to make sure that you feel comfortable in that space, you're going to go and feel comfortable in that space. So does it have to be reflective of the society as a whole? No. Does it have to be inviting to society as a whole? Absolutely. Absolutely, it has to be inviting. But I always get a little bit concerned when I think we must reflect society. I really don't think we will, because I think society is increasingly urbanized and our sport is not urbanized. So we need to make sure we find a balance where we can be inviting, but we're not trying to force ourselves to look like how the rest of Britain is looking like at the moment. I think that's crazy and impossible, really. We're really starting from scratch here. Like, the progress that's been made in such a short space of time it's been wonderful and been great to see. But let's be honest, it's all happened in such a short space of time. You won't see instant. I highly doubt in my lifetime I'll see a full change. I think we'll see changes. I think we'll see little incremental changes, but I don't think we'll see a huge cataclysmic change in racing while I'm still alive. I'd love to say I've been a part of it, but in reality, I think it is going to take time. But it just needs people to keep chipping away and making changes and making this sport as, again, inviting to society, not so much as reflective of society.
Well, thanks for that segment. It's really enjoyable chatting to you about that. I know how passionate you are about racing.
Oh, it's me. It means so damn much.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, let's talk about a few. I've got 4 topics to talk about quite briefly before we end. The first one, we've mentioned it already, is Cheltenham. Why did you think there was a drop in crowds at Cheltenham?
Oh, so many reasons. I think affordability is the number one thing. I think we can often get ourselves tied up in knots that say people didn't come to Cheltenham because of the lack of competitiveness. I think that's utterly insane. I think people would come to Cheltenham if they could afford to come to Cheltenham. And I think Cheltenham became unaffordable. I don't think it was just the racecourse ticket. I was really intrigued by the Racing Post a couple of days after interviewing people that had spent watching it in Benidorm. And all these people who are actually in Benidorm, we go to Cheltenham every other meeting. We go to Trials Day. We go to the open meeting. We'll go to Hunter Chase evening. We just won't go to the festival because it's too expensive. So what we're saying is people still want to go to Cheltenham. They just don't want to go to the festival. Now, why on earth would you go to every Cheltenham meeting and not the festival? Well, it's because it's not for the quality of racing. You're not going to opening day for the quality of the racing. You're going there because it's at Cheltenham. So people still want to go to the venues for watch the sport at its Jump Racing's HQ. But in reality, they can't afford it. And you can't afford to stay there. And people laughed at the Jockey Club being connected with the group that were erecting sort of not tents, but sort of, I don't know, shells of buildings at a price. But that price was still too high. But if they'd halved that price, I'd have gone with my mates and stayed. If you could have done it and treated it like a bit of a festival and done that sort of thing, like people go to Silverstone for the F1, they're not staying in hotels, they're all camping on site. So there's no issue with people going along and roughing it. But at the end of the day, it's got to be made affordable, and that wasn't affordable at all. So, and it makes the Jockey Club look silly, and they get it in the neck and they'll say it wasn't their idea, it's not what they're doing. But I think serious conversations have to be held about the affordability of it, and we can sit there and talk about the dilution of quality and the lack of 140 plus rated horses, but you could have had the most competitive Cheltenham Festival in the world in its history. You could have had no odds-on favourites. You still wouldn't have got a bigger turnout than you'd have got last year. I feel there might have been a small percentage of people that didn't come because of the quality of the racing, but most people were put off because of the price, and you were just not in a position where you can afford to do that. And Cheltenham needs to understand that. And if Cheltenham is going to be telling local businesses and local hotels to knock their prices down, Cheltenham has to be willing to knock its prices down too. And there has to be a discussion with food vendors and drinks vendors and all these other sort of things. Personally, I think £7 for a pint at a sporting event isn't a shocking thing. I think most sporting events you go to, you're going to be paying £7 for a pint, so I'm not quite sure what that is. But some of the food is outlandishly expensive. If you are going to be paying through the neck for food, it should be of a quality higher than possibly what a lot of people were getting on the day. And I think it needs to take a long, hard look at itself. But from a racing perspective, I really don't think it would have stopped people coming if they could afford it. And I think if the racing quality is going to be a little bit lower, you better make sure the tickets are lower. You better make sure it's more affordable to go. You can't be expecting people to pay top dollar for not a top dollar event.
Right, thanks for that one. Next one is, what were your reflections on this year's Grand National?
We had a good chat in the office about this yesterday. I'll upset people and say I loved it. I've watched the Grand National through peeping through the holes in my eyes, holes in my hands like this for the last 10 years. I remember Neptune's Collonges winning, beating Summerhill Boy in that finish. And I remember as they galloped past, I think it was the second flight, and they're tarpauling over a dead horse. And I remember thinking to myself then, and I was at Aintree that year, I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here because this is barbaric. What we're asking horses to do is barbaric. And it's strange because if you look back at old nationals, the jockeyship compared to modern nationals is complete. Some of the people that were riding in those old nationals of the 60s and 70s, you watch it and you're like, oh, that's not you meant to ride a racehorse. But they were riding a much more robust, a much stronger, a much slower, much bigger built animal than they're riding now. And now what we had these elite athletes, which I think our jockeys are now, riding horses that were not designed to be doing what they were being asked to do. And I think we were on a road to losing the race completely, especially after last year's event. I remember watching last year's event and thinking, this isn't going to be around in 10 years' time. Like, it was horrific. I think it's crucial that people remember. I think there's been a lot of discussion about how, it's not the same race. It's not the same race. But the same race as what we saw last year could not survive. Racing fans wouldn't have let it survive, because at the end of the day, we saw protests, we saw a completely and utterly uncontrolled start. I loved Ruby Walsh's analysis of it this year, looking back at it last year, because I've been banging the table about this. They were at a full gallop on the outside last year. They'd been held up, so it was like the King's Stand going to the first, and they're running down for a furlong and a half, and then they're flying, and they're not even seeing it, and it was a recipe for disaster. This year, I thought the start was excellent. They were never going to get a full standing start, but I thought we saw what happened in the amateur race and the Topham, and that was sort of our barometer of where to go, where it wasn't standing, but it was controlled. And that control start led to what I thought was a really pleasurable race to watch. Did we lack the fallers and the drama that you'll often see in Grand Nationals past? Yes, I completely understand that. But this is our shop window. It is one time where everyone is talking about racing. And usually, a lot of the conversation that I have with people is trying to defend our sport. And it's the Grand National is the prime part of conversation. This year, we could have been proud of the event. And I think I've never been more proud of our sport than after this year's race. They swung in and there's 20 in with a chance. I was on Minella, Indo and Marla Mission. So my chance had gone at the chair and I was just hoping that Rachel could get this thing home. And I was so proud, so proud of our sport. I'm proud of Aintree, proud of the Jockey Club, proud of everyone involved. It was something I was very proud of. I do think they'll need to change the entry criteria. I think you will need to limit people to 4 horses. I think all Premier handicaps should be limited to 4 horses per trainer. I think it's just a flat out limit. I think to me makes sense. I think it's really interesting that when it was first mooted, there was a lot of negativity around it. And now people are calling for it again. It's like the BHA aren't stupid. Like they tried to do it before and everyone else kicked off. Like, let's remember the BHA, they get a lot of stick, but they're not stupid. The people in race planning are not stupid. And they've been trying to do this and everyone went mental and they had to renege, they had to U-turn. And now what we're doing, we're all begging for it. Because at the end of the day, especially the way the race is now, and if it continues in this path where it becomes an easier course to jump around and more high quality horses you can get in, what's stopping you from sending the Gold Cup winner? What's stopping you from sending an army of really good horses? Well, what's going to happen is the race is going to lose the storyline element to it. And I think it's crucial that we can maintain the storyline element of it. We have to maintain what made the Grand National great wasn't the horses somersaulting through the air and breaking their necks. That's not what made it great. What made the National great was the people that won it. The people that were Liam Treadwell winning and getting commented about his teeth from Claire Balding will go down in history because it's a story. It's a story. Now, Paul Townend and Willie Mullins, let's not take anything away from them. They're exceptional. They are absolutely exceptional. And Willie has every right to send 4 superstars every year. But don't be sending 6. We've already got 30, 34 runners. Don't be sending 6. Don't Gordon, don't be sending 8. Especially when Cocoa Beach was one of them. I could have had more chance of winning the race than Cocoa Beach. I love the horse, he's great, but let's be honest. Kanundu Kweti, again, this is where I get really, really into it about British trainers. I think as much as we've been slagging off Irish trainers for having too many runners, I think British trainers need to take a long, hard look at themselves and work out why there weren't enough horses rated at 148 plus. Because Kanundu Kweti is probably what I would call a second, maybe third tier handicap chaser. He was rated 105. Do you know why? They campaigned him over the summer. He got a rating of 145 and he missed out on a national by a couple of runners. On an old national, he would have got in. So the question is, why aren't more trainers trying to get the horses rated into 145, 148? Why are we not doing that? I cannot understand how this is an issue and how, because there are lots of trainers with far better horses than Kanundu Kweti, but Sam England was like, this is what we're doing. We're targeting this horse to get a rating to try and get into a national. And they nearly succeeded. So I think a lot more could be done to get opportunities to get your horse a little bit of a higher rating. But I don't think we'll be able to see more than 4. I really don't, because I think what's going to happen is the race is going to lose that story element. And look at the way Iron Maximus won that race. Now, you could arguably say that Iron Maximus isn't JP McManus's best staying chaser, which is frightening because he won that like a fresh horse. So I think it's crucial that we ensure that the race keeps its stories as well as keeping it as a safe, enjoyable spectacle to watch. Because I still found it enjoyable. It still looked like a national. Yeah, I can understand a lot of people say it didn't feel like a national. But if we lose the feel but we get to keep the race, I'll take it every single time.
That was a long answer, but very well put.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. It's one of the topics that I just it really grinds my gears.
It must have been a good discussion in the office by the sound of it.
It was a cracking discussion in the office.
Well, let's move on to another topic then. This will probably be another long answer, I think, but the horsepower website, a significant development?
Yes, massively. Numbers. Evidence, statistics.
I love the facts, yeah.
Yeah, inject it into my veins. it's not laughable that it's taken so long to come into it, but it's us acknowledging that there are people outside the racing bubble who don't want the sport to exist, and it's us standing on business and saying, no, this is our sport, this is what we do, here's the evidence to suggest that what we do is okay, and this is what you see. And I think it's something that it was a very soft launch, and it was launched mainly in racing circles, but we can see it, or I can already see where they want to do it. They want to push out into other forms of social media. They want the facts to be out there, because people cannot argue with facts. And what we were creating, we were arguing with emotion. And emotion is great, and it can be really well put and really eloquently put, but you need the numbers to back you up. So I think it's massively important, the website, and I hope it does grow, and we don't just rest on our laurels and think, that's all we've done. We've done everything we need to do. Let's just wait till next year. I think it needs to be continually pushed, especially throughout the flat season as well. It shouldn't be something that's just kept under wraps until we go jumping again. It should be all the way through the year. It should be mentioned every time to racing on terrestrial television, because there'll be a lot of people who'll be with family members who don't like racing. So, well, okay, if you don't like it, that's fine. But if you think we just go out and shoot all the horses, then please go and look at this website and let us show you the evidence.
Yeah, you read my notes here. I put down needs more promotion on social media.
Yeah, and that will come. And I really do think it was a softy launch, because you've got to remember that BHA have a unfortunate situation where a lot of what they put out gets ridiculed. And I think they wanted to put it out to racing, see what the reaction in racing was like before going full launch. And look at what they've done with premierisation. It's a softy approach. And it's only going to grow. People want to see instant reaction, instantaneous responses. These things take time. And as long as there is time being put into it, and there is a strategy, and people who are far more smarter than you and I are involved in it, then I wish them all the best with it. I just don't want them to stop now thinking the job is done, because there is so much more they can do.
But the website explains things very simply, doesn't it? And the questions brilliant. Are very good as well, I thought.
Yeah, it's well defined. It's easy to read. It seems to have a modern look that people who are using the internet right now can associate with, and they've used a third party for it. But I think the third party has done a very good job. And from everything I heard, I listened to a little bit on Luck on Sunday, that it was quite an affordable situation, so we weren't throwing good money after bad. And I hope that it continues. And I do. I've got nothing but congratulations to say to everybody involved.
Right, our last question. We're not far away now from the opening classics of the season. I don't want a tip from you for City of Troy, but is City of Troy going to give Aidan O'Brien his 11th 2,000 guineas?
Look, we saw Hartum at the weekend. If City of Troy has improved the way Hartum has improved, 4 to 6 will look massive. That's the only thing I can say. There is an idea that City of Troy turned up and hasn't improved, hasn't taken a step forward. I speak to a lot of people in Bloodstock. I haven't worked in that industry myself. I always get told the 2,000 guineas is the last 2-year-old race of the season. So in reality, some of these horses might not have taken a step forward. I'm intrigued by a lot of them, but City of Troy he was awesome as a juvenile. And Aidan gets a lot of stick for saying these are really good horses, but he knows a good horse, and he has a good horse every year. Like Orchid Rodan is a good horse. City of Troy, I think, is an even better horse, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he does at Newmarket. And I think if you can get him at 4 to 6, I imagine it wouldn't surprise me if he's a bit weak on the day. And if you can get him at around 4 to 6, I think he'd be in a very good place. I think Ghost Rider is an interesting horse as well. The unbeaten runner. He had a nice racecourse gallop recently, but again, it's all a learning expedition, really. We're just waiting to see. But I think what we discovered through the Greenham is that the 3-year-old colts might not be that strong, and if City of Troy is half the horse he still is, he was as a juvenile, he'll be right at the top of that tree, and hopefully he's taken a step forward. And I'd love to see them go for the Guineas Derby with him, go for the 2,000 guineas, then go for the Epsom Derby. I think it'd be wonderfully exciting.
And then they're even talking about then going on the dirt, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, well, either Justify. They do it on the dirt. It's crucial to remember that Justify was not the leading dirt stallion in the US. He was second in that regard. He was behind, I can't remember who was ahead of him, but he was definitely second. I was talking to Freddie Talicki about it, and he was like, "Yeah, you've it's not guaranteed he's going to go on the dirt, but you'd think the pedigree suggests that he could, and that's when my Saudi brain starts kicking in, because I think there's no more forgiving dirt surface than the one at Riyadh. So come over to Saudi Cup and come over for the Saudi Cup race if you think you're hard enough.
Well, hopefully you'll be there at the Saudi Cup in 2025 to watch it.
All fingers crossed. Really looking forward to it. Fillies wise, I know you can't miss the Fillies. I'd like Ylang in that one. I think I really like the way she won the Fillies mile last time. I think she was getting better every stride, and she loved the dips. So I'd be very tempted with her. I think Fallen Angel is justifiably favourite. I couldn't have anything out of France. I think they all look a little bit vulnerable at the moment. But yeah, Ylang for me, with no opera singer in there.
Well, thank you for those tips, Callum. Thanks again for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion. You've come a very, very long way since those days of watching the morning line at 8 years old.
Still got to thank John McCruick for getting me involved to start with. So yeah, still that was John McCruick, Tanya Stevenson. I'm forever grateful to them. I still get starstruck when I see Tanya. So that's still a bit of a mess for me at the moment, because they are such an important part of my life, my childhood, and it's been incredible. I'm so fortunate. I've worked bloody hard, but I am so fortunate the way things have worked out and the opportunities that I've been given, and hopefully they can keep coming, and I'll keep trying to take them, because I love the sport. Hopefully that comes across, but I absolutely adore it, and I just want to be involved in it forever and ever, really.
Well, it certainly comes across in your voice and your knowledge of the sport. Thanks again for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. Whether it's a walk-off grand slam or a base hit to center field. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only, must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.